Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. You might recall in my previous video regarding the Iran war that I mentioned at the very end I was going to make another video covering end-time prophecy. Let me explain why I'm presenting this video to you. It's not that I believe or disbelieve in end-time prophecy, but when we consider the Christian nationalist, the fundamentalist Christian nationalist element in our government currently, as well as the Shia Islam leadership in Iran, when we look at when we compare and contrast their views, their end-time philosophy, their prophecy, I think it's important to understand how they think, what they think is going to transpire, and really how dangerous this thinking is. That's why I'm presenting this video to you, because it's going to affect all of our lives. The current war, it's only in its, 10th or 11th day. It's going to last a lot longer. It's not going to be a quick operation. And Iran is not going to roll over like Iraq did, okay? Now, let me just say, some of you might find the content of this video disturbing. My intention here is not to disturb you, certainly not to offend you, but to help us be more informed. As some of you are aware, in Congress, in the Trump administration, in the Department of Defense, in government agencies like the Office of Management and Budget, we have extreme fundamentalist Christians. And as I mentioned, also known as white Christian nationalists. Some of these people are in high-level influential positions. As the current war against Iran rages on, the war, the United States and Israel against Iran, U.S. military commanders, believe it or not, they've been some military commanders, very few, but they are out there. They have actually called forth extremist Christian rhetoric about biblical end times, selling the war to the troops as a holy war, okay? The Watchdog Group, and you can look these guys up online, the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, they have a website. I recently watched an interview with the leader of this group. He said they've been inundated, as of a week ago, they were inundated with more than 200 complaints from members across all branches of our military regarding these types of comments. Give you an example, one unit commander repeatedly said that war is part of God's divine plan. This war in particular, and this is a direct quote, President Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to earth. That's a direct quote. Let me just briefly talk about how this is really dangerous for esprit de corps and unit cohesion. Esprit de corps, I'm a military veteran. I mentioned that in previous videos. I spent 9 years in our Air Force. I was in the Gulf War. I was in Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War. Unit cohesion, esprit de corps, is critical to accomplish the mission. Our military isn't just a bunch of white Christians, okay? Our military reflects society. It reflects American society. We are a multicultural society. It's dangerous to say things like this when you have people of other faiths that serve in our military. We have Jews in our military who serve honorably. We have Muslims in our military who serve honorably. We have Sikhs. We have, oh my goodness, Buddhists in our military who serve honorably. I know people of each of these faiths who either have served or are currently serving in our military, and they are terrific. So to marginalize one group by espousing this sort of belief does not help military cohesion, unit cohesion, or esprit de corps. Now, right now, as this war is raging between Iran, Israel, and the U.S., there are a lot of people who are looking at the battlefield, but they're missing the theology underneath it. Well, what if I told you that American fundamentalists and Iran's Shia clerics are both waiting for a world-changing, divinely guided leader but they sharply disagree on who this is and how he arrives. Well, if you follow American religious or political life, you've probably heard bits and pieces of end times talk. Phrases like the rapture, the Antichrist, Armageddon. On the other side of the world, and especially in Iran, you'll hear talk about the Mahdi, M-A-H-D-I. You'll hear talk about the Mahdi, also known as the hidden Imam. If you want, Google Mahdism, M-A-H-D-I-S-M. You can read about that, okay? In this video, I want to put these stories side by side. The end-time prophecy that's popular in fundamentalist Christianity, particularly Christian nationalism, and the doctrine of Mahdism in 12er Shia Islam, which is centered on the belief in the 12th Imam. Okay? Now, my goal is not to attack either side. Please understand. It's just to help us understand what they actually say, how the two belief systems are similar, how they're different, and why this matters at this critical and dangerous juncture we're at today. All right, let's start with the Christian side. So when I say Christian or fundamentalist Christian end times, what I'm talking about is a particular model that's especially common among conservative evangelicals in the United States. You'll see it in prophecy conferences, you'll see it in certain study Bibles, in best-selling novels. There's a series by Tim LaHaye, who's a pastor. He wrote this with another person, another gentleman. It's the Left Behind series. I think it's like an 8-volume series of end-time prophecy. It's a novel. It's a fictional novel, but anyway, that's just an example of one of the best-selling novels. Or, you know, and then you've also got Christian TV. All of this, it's not the only Christian view, but it's a very influential Christian view. Okay, so the basic script of fundamentalist Christian end-time prophecy goes something like this. First, you're going to have the rapture. Then you're going to have the 7-year tribulation. Then you're going to have the second coming of Jesus Christ. Then you're going to have a 1,000-year kingdom, often referred to as the millennium. And then finally, you'll have the last judgment and the new creation. So it's a very linear, step-by-step story. Okay? Now, the rapture is the opening shock. Okay? In this view, at some point in the near future, according to Christian prophecy, Jesus will suddenly snatch all the true believers off the earth. Okay? And they will meet the Lord in the air. And in an instant, millions of people will disappear from planes, from cars, from workplaces, supermarkets, from homes. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a supermarket chatting with someone, and then in the blink of an eye, that person suddenly disappears from in front of you. Those who are left behind, they're going to enter a period of intense global turmoil. Okay? Now that turmoil, that's the 7-year tribulation. Okay? It's during this time that an extraordinarily charismatic world figure will emerge. This figure is known as the Antichrist. This person, he will offer peace, order, stability, a sort of global unity, but under the surface, he is in direct rebellion with God and the teachings of God. He eventually demands worship himself. He persecutes those who remain faithful to God, to Christ, and he creates a political and economic system that marks out those who belong to him and those who resist him. Okay? Now, this period is going to be marked by wars. It's going to be marked by disasters, by plagues, by judgments. It's often mapped onto the symbols of the book of Revelations and the prophecies of Daniel. Okay? The world system in this story consolidates into a kind of anti-Christian empire. For many fundamentalists, this has been associated with institutions like the UN, the United Nations, the European Union, the World Trade Organization, and other similar world-type governments. And then at the end of the tribulation, that's going to come to the climax, the second coming of Jesus. That's the climax. In this model, Jesus Christ returns. He returns body and soul. He returns gloriously with his army of heaven. And in the final battle, that battle, which is associated with the word Armageddon, the Antichrist and his forces will be defeated. Christ will decisively win. He will judge his enemies, and he will establish his kingdom on earth. Okay. Now, this kingdom on earth, many hold that this view is expected. This kingdom on earth is going to last a literal 1,000 years. There'll be a 1,000-year reign of Christ ruling on earth. That's referred to as the millennium. During this time, Satan will be restrained. Justice and peace will flourish, and the nations will live under direct rule by Christ. Only after this millennial period do you get the final judgment. Okay? That's where all of humanity is to be raised, judged, and assigned to either eternal life or eternal punishment, followed by a new heaven and a new earth. Okay? So that, in a nutshell, is the simplified version of the fundamentalist end times timeline. The rapture, the tribulation, the Antichrist, Armageddon, millennium, the final judgment. Your eternal destiny in this framework hinges on your response to Jesus Christ, whether you accept him as Lord and Savior, and whether you align yourself, knowingly or not, with the Antichrist and that rebellious world system. Okay? So, let's now turn to the Shia side. Let's see how their end times prophecy lines up as well as differs from this. Okay? In particular, we're going to be talking about the Twelver Shia Islam, which is the dominant form of Shia Islam in Iran and in several other countries and communities around the world. Okay, so Twelver Shia Muslims, they believe that after the Prophet Muhammad, God didn't simply leave the community to figure things out on its own. Okay, instead, there would be a line of 12 imams. Okay, spiritual imams are spiritual and political leaders. Okay. They are direct descendants of the Prophet Muhammad through his daughter Fatima and her husband Ali. Okay. Now, these imams are seen as divinely guided. They are spiritually pure, and they are the rightful leaders of the Muslim community. Okay. The 12th and final imam in this line is Muhammad al-Mahdi. Now, according to Twelver belief, this 12th imam was born in the 9th century, okay, the son of the 11th imam, Hassan al-Askari. And here's the critical point. They believe he never died. He did not die, okay? Instead, as a young child or as a young man, he went into what is called occultation, okay, a state of hiddenness. Now, the word occultation, the root word is occult. Don't think of occultation as some sort of an occult thing like Satan, like movies about the occult, etc. If you will look up the word occultation in the dictionary, it actually refers to a star, a heavenly body hidden by another heavenly body, okay? So anyway, now regarding this occultation, there are two phases to this. There's the first minor occultation, the first occultation, during which the imam was hidden from public view, but communicated through appointed deputies. Then in the 10th century, that minor occultation ended and the major occultation began. Okay? Since that time, the 12th imam has been alive. That's right. Alive but fully hidden, according to this Twelver Shia philosophy. Okay? He does not make public appearances. He does not send messages through named deputies, yet he remains in doctrine the true imam, the legitimate leader of the community, and a kind of unseen spiritual presence in the world. Now, here's the thing, 12er Shia believes that near the end time, this hidden imam will reappear as the Mahdi, the rightly guided one. When he re-emerges, the world will be in a state of widespread injustice, corruption, and oppression. Tyrants will dominate the world, and the rights of the oppressed, including the Shia and the family of the Prophet Muhammad, will have been trampled for centuries. Okay? The Mahdi's mission is to reverse this. He will appear, according to this philosophy, this prophecy. He will gather his followers, and he'll lead a global movement to overthrow the oppression, to defeat tyranny, to establish justice on earth. Under his leadership, very interesting, under his leadership, the true interpretation of Islam, and specifically the Shia understanding of the faith, is vindicated. Because you might be aware that there are primarily two sects to Islam. Just as there are two sects to Christianity, you've got the Protestants and Catholics. In Islam, you have the Sunni and the Shia. So the Sunni faith is vindicated. Wrongdoers will be punished. The victims of history are vindicated. And the world is then reordered around justice and true worship. Okay? In many Shia traditions, this is interesting, and I was already aware of this after spending time in the Middle East. In many Shia traditions, Jesus, who in Islam is known as Isa, I-S-A, Jesus will also return. But here, the role of Jesus is different than from the Christian fundamentalist script. In Shia thought, Jesus is indeed a great prophet, but he's not the Son of God. When he returns, when Jesus returns, he does so in support of the Mahdi. He confirms the true, the truth of Islam, and he prays behind the Mahdi, and he helps in the defeat of falsehood. So Jesus appears in both stories, in the Christian end times prophecy as well as the 12er Shia prophecy. Mahdiism. But in one, he is the supreme returning Lord, whereas in the other, he's a confirming prophet who is standing behind the Mahdi. So, with these two narratives on the table, let's go ahead and compare them, okay? First, they share some striking similarities, all right? They are both linear stories. History moves toward a climax, not an endless cycle of incidents, but toward a climax. Both of these expect a period of severe crisis near the end, whether that's called the tribulation on the Christian side or a time of rampant injustice and tyranny on the Shia side. Okay? They both expect a personal, divinely backed leader who appears at the end of history, who defeats evil and who inaugurates an era of justice before or alongside the final judgment. Okay? And they both imagine a final sorting of humanity. Some will be vindicated and rewarded, but others are condemned. Now, the differences are just as important as the similarities. The most obvious difference is the identity of that central figure. In fundamentalist Christianity, the hero is Jesus Christ, who is understood as the incarnate Son of God, who already came once in history and will return again. In 12er Shia Islam, the hero is Muhammad al-Mahdi, this hidden 12th Imam, who is a human descendant of the Prophet Muhammad and is sinless and guided, but not divine. Okay? Now, that leads us to a second major difference, okay? Where that leader is right now, okay? In the Christian script, Jesus is still in heaven, okay? He ascended body and soul after his resurrection to heaven, and believers are waiting for his return. Whereas in Shia's script, the Mahdi is not in heaven. The Mahdi is alive, has been alive since the 9th century, but he's hidden. He's present in the world, but he's not accessible. And, he is the rightful imam. He exists, but he's concealed. Okay? Now, another point is the question of present leadership. For most fundamentalist Protestants, okay, there is no infallible human leader on earth. You have pastors, you have teachers, institutions, but no one is considered divinely protected from error. Authority is found in the Bible and ultimately in Christ himself, who will return at the end. All right. In 12er Shia thought, however, there's an infallible imam who is hidden. In his physical absence, religious scholars and jurists interpret his law and guide the community. In modern Iran, this has developed into the doctrine that senior clerics can exercise political authority as well as be the guardians of the community until the imam returns. Now, another issue, the political angle. Okay, in a lot of fundamentalist Christian teachings, the end-time political order is something to be suspicious of. You're going to have a coming world government. You're going to have a one-world economy, a kind of global system that will eventually be headed by the Antichrist. And that often produces a deep wariness of international institutions, as I mentioned earlier, a deep wariness of global treaties, and of any leader who seems to promise the kind of utopian world unity that we mentioned earlier. The system looks prophetic. It's not just politics, it's a sign that the end is near. Okay? In 12er Shia Mahdism, the dynamic there is a little more complex. The hidden imam is the rightful ruler, but in his absence we have religious authorities who can justify a strong, religiously guided state as a kind of caretaker. In some interpretations of this, the state is not just tolerated, but is actively preparing society for the Mahdi's return, okay? Preserving Islamic law, resisting Western domination, and defending the oppressed. So where the Christian fundamentalist mindset often sees end-time political power as something to resist, some Shia thinkers see a properly guided political order as something to build, as a sort of a prelude or a preparation for the imam's eventual appearance. Okay, there's also a difference in the way that the other is handled. Okay, in fundamentalist Christian end times teaching, salvation hinges upon accepting Jesus Christ and rejecting the Antichrist and his system. There's a sharp division between believers and unbelievers at this time. Those who belong to Christ will enter eternal life, and those who do not belong to Christ will, those who do not will face judgment. Okay? In 12er Shia thought, the Mahdi's rule is universal. He brings justice to all humanity, but it also vindicates Shia belief and the line of the imams. Traditions differ exactly on how non-Shia and non-Muslims fit into that final picture, but the trajectory is clear. The true religion is publicly vindicated and historical injustices are put right. Okay? Now, one other interesting point of comparison that I discovered in all this research is how each side views the other's teachings. Some Christian writers, especially in certain circles, have looked at the Islamic idea of the Mahdi and said, well, that looks a lot like our Antichrist, okay? A charismatic global leader connected to Jerusalem, reshaping the world order, a religious vision that denies the divinity of Christ. All right, that's a Christian reading of someone else's figure. It's not a shared belief, but it shows how each tradition can map the other's expectations into its own categories. All right, now on the Shia side, okay, the focus is less on Christian prophecy and more on the logic of justice and oppression. The Mahdi's mission is, as I think I mentioned earlier, to stand with the oppressed, especially the family of the Prophet Muhammad and their followers, and stand against tyrants. Western powers, secular regimes, and domestic oppressors, they can all be read into that script, depending on the context. All right. So, why does all this matter? Okay. It matters because these are not just abstract doctrines that are sitting on a shelf. They really shape, and that's where it's important, they really shape how real communities imagine the future, how they interpret current events, and how they think about compromise, conflict, and power. Remember what I said earlier at the very beginning. We've got right-wing fundamentalist Christian nationalists who believe in this end of times teaching, this prophecy, and they are actively trying to shape it to prepare for the return of Jesus Christ. Okay, that terrifies the hell out of me. In parts of American evangelicalism, if you believe the world is inevitably sliding toward a final showdown, you might be more inclined to see wars in the Middle East as signs of the times, you would be more suspicious of diplomacy that seems to divide Israel. Remember, another person that we have is the ambassador to Israel, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, the former governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, who is also a pastor. And these are his beliefs. He sees wars in the Middle East as signs of the times, and he's wary of any sort of diplomacy that will divide Israel. He's more open to, or they in general are more open to, leaders who frame geopolitical crises in prophetic terms. On the Shia side, the belief in the hidden imam and his eventual return can lend religious meaning to resistance against foreign domination and to the idea of a religious state that holds the line until the true imam appears. All right? So when American officials and Iranian officials face each other, with all of this in mind that we just discussed, when they face each other in this moment, in this present time, they're not just bringing policies to the table. In the background, they're carrying a very different apocalyptic imagination, different pictures of where history is going, and different pictures, an idea of who ultimately is going to win. So if you pull all of this together, you can think of these two systems as two rival end-time dramas. Both believe that history ends not with a whimper, but with a big bang. All right, it's going to be a period of intense crises, of a divinely guided leader, and of the triumph of justice. They disagree profoundly on who that leader is, on where he is now, how he relates to Jesus, and how believers should relate to power and politics while they wait. I know this has been heavy. I hope it's been informative. I hope it's given you a better understanding of these two belief systems. They are real, and they exist, and they are currently locked in a fierce war involving the lives of millions of people. I hope this has helped us to understand some of the emotional and spiritual currents that are currently running beneath our headlines. I welcome your comments. I welcome your suggestions. My next video isn't going to be so heavy. It's not going to be on this particular subject. If you liked the video, if you found it helpful, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down. And I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel's visibility among the YouTube community. And until then, thank you very much for your time.